Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Mike Fernandez with Arpit Realty. Welcome back to part two in this video series on how to get started in real estate investing, the four major problems that you need to solve if you want to become a real estate investor. So, part one, we just kind of did a quick overview of this slide here, talking about what are those four problems that you need to solve. We talked about how they tied together. We talked about some expectations. Today, we're talking about part two is number one. A little confusing there, but bear with me. But we're talking about finding deals today. The reason this is number one of these four to me is because whenever somebody asks me, where do I start? How do I start? I always go here first. Number one, finding a deal. Because guess what? If you can find a deal, you can find a way to make money. If it's a great deal, you can make money off of that deal, whether you buy it yourself, whether you find somebody to partner with, whether you wholesale it, whether there's a million different scenarios where you can make money off of a great deal. But without it, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what strategy you're using. It doesn't matter how much cash you have. It doesn't matter what kind of financing you have. It doesn't matter how good of an operator you are. If you don't have a deal, there's nowhere else to go. So to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we're going to start for number one. So we're going to unpack some things in here. But before we do on these kind of the four key pieces to the puzzle, so to speak, in finding a deal, I want to manage expectations a little bit because I think a lot of new investors come in and they expect their first deal to be a home run. And very, very, very rarely is that the case. So, like, number one thing I'll say in here, your first deal does not need to be a home run. I'm going to say it again. Your first deal does not need to be a home run. A base hit is perfectly fine for your first deal. To that point, I would say that my first five deals, I didn't think they're a home run looking back right here now, 10 plus years later, it's a home run. In the moment, none of them were a home run. I would say three out of the first five properties, I walked away from the closing table thinking, doggone it, I overpaid. I shouldn't have done this. I had buyer's remorse almost immediately, right? So the first deal doesn't need to be a home run. It gets you in the game. It gets you the reps. It helps build your identity as a real estate investor, which I think is one of the biggest hurdles for most people. So now that we've got that out of the way, as far as the expectation of your first deal, I want to talk about a few different like characteristics or skills or traits or things that you can work towards that are going to enhance your ability to get better deals, right? When you are first starting out, if you come to me and say, Mike, I got no money, I'm just starting, so I don't know anybody and I have no experience, but I want a home run. Like, we haven't necessarily earned the right to have a home run, right? Because for you to get a home run deal, it's going to take access to deals that nobody else sees, right? Which is going to come from experience and relationships. You're probably going to have to make a cash offer, which is going to come from access to capital. And then you're probably going to have to have the experience to know that it's a great deal or why it's a great deal, right? Or the experience on how to find it as a great deal. So these are very, very important things. This triangle here is very important things that I want everybody who's new to work towards gaining, right? Every day make small incremental progress towards these things. One important note on capital. Capital, it doesn't have to be your capital necessarily, right? It could be a line of credit. When we're going to talk about funding and financing in the next couple of steps, but there's one important caveat. Don't all of a sudden disqualify yourself because you don't have 100K saved up in the bank, right? Relationships. Look, this is to me why why those meetups are so important. In the first video, I talked about that newbie panel last month's meetup, where I interviewed those three people. And I think being in those rooms, Dylan is a phenomenal example of that. Being in those rooms, the importance of it cannot be oversold, right? Like, there are certain things in a chat GPT and social media world, being in those rooms with real people, you cannot overstate the importance of that. So super, super important. And then obviously experience is going to come with time. There are some things you can do to speed that up a little bit, but ultimately, you just have to put in the work. You have to analyze the deals, right? A piece of advice that I give to people all the time is, hey, find what you want your buy box to be. And this relates to deals. We'll get to this in a second. Find what you want your buy box to be, right? What's the type of deal do you want? Do you want single family homes in St. Bernard Parish? Do you want doubles in Orleans? Do you want Airbnb? Whatever it is, and analyze every single one that hits the market, right? Whether you're working with a realtor and you have an automatic drip campaign, or if you're just looking on Zillow every day, or Realtor.com, or Redfin, wherever you're looking on, um, find every single one that's in that buy box. Again, maybe single family homes in St. Bernard Parish that are less than $200,000 ARV, right? Or a 3-bed, 2-bath in St. Bernard Parish, whatever it is. Analyze every single one and figure out, what would I offer on this, right? What's the renovation? What would I offer? And then follow it and see what it actually closes for. Okay. But anyway, so all that being said, number one, finding the deal, the most important in my opinion. So we're looking at on market versus off market, right? On market, you're working with a realtor. It's something that is going to be, and actually this chat kind of got the graphic here wrong, so I don't know why. Auction should be off market. So pardon that, but on market, it's going to be working with a realtor, right? Something on MLS. And I think, look, if you're a newbie, there's this mental block for people on, there's no good deals on the market, right? On MLS. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I've bought deals on MLS that ended up being great deals. Now, are you going to find a home run on the MLS? Probably not, right? Somebody else is probably going to captured it before it hit the MLS. But good deals can be found on MLS. The second piece that I'll say on market deals and working with a realtor is, if you are brand new and you have none of the three things we just talked about, or maybe you have capital, right? But you're brand new, you don't have the relationships, and you don't have the experience. You're working with a person who can kind of be your safety net and stop you from making a terrible decision, right? Now, not all realtors are made the same. They're not all equal. And you want to do your own due diligence. And ultimately, you're the one that's going to be responsible for the decision in the deal. But it is an expert who's in your corner, you've built a relationship with, who can help you dodge some of those potholes, right, in New Orleans speak. So there can be deals. If you're new, I think that's actually a great way to go about it. Because if somebody's listed on the market, they're expecting a little bit more than an off-market deal, the seller this is, right? But they're also probably willing to work with you on closing costs and timeline. They're probably not needing to close it in 2 weeks. If somebody's calling me as a realtor, right, they're not calling me because they want to sell the house in 2 weeks, right? They're going to call me as an investor or a wholesaler or somebody else. So this is one where you can kind of take your time, do plenty of due diligence, get conventional financing. I think it's a great fit for some investors. Okay. So that is on market. Now since chat decided to put auctions in that bucket, we'll talk about that now. Auctions are a good way to find deals below market value. However, they come with two very big caveats. I would say they're probably not a good fit for a newer investor unless you're working with somebody who's been there and done that. The two big things I will say on auctions: number one, for most places, you need to bring the equivalent of cash or a check or something the same day. Here in St. Bernard Parish, you buy something at the auction. They're not going to wait around for you to get financing. If you buy a house for $100,000, you need to bring a $100,000 check to the sheriff's office that day, right? Which is difficult for a lot of people. So you need to either have financing or have access to financing. Number two is 9 times out of 10, these are sight unseen. So there is no due diligence period. There is no doing a sewer line inspection or a home inspection, right? We have literally bought properties from the auction and later found out that they needed all new sewer lines. So a property we thought was going to be a great flip and we're going to make good money, barely broke even. We made $5,000 or something like that because it needed $13,000 in sewer line repairs. So buyer beware, right? It is a way you can get good deals, but it also takes a lot of patience. And you can get burnt because, you never know what the inside is going to look like. Now, off market, I think chat kind of mixed this up a little bit. I do like how it has deal finders, but I think you could probably lump those under off market deals. But anyway, off market means it's not on MLS, right? So the good thing is you're not competing with everybody. On MLS, every investor who's possibly interested is going to see it, and they might be putting an offer in. Off market, my favorite of these is this driving for dollars. I think this is the most underrated strategy for finding deals that exist. So driving for dollars, if you're not familiar with it, is basically you drive around and you find blighted, rundown houses that need a lot of work. They're in major disrepair. Right? It could be multifamily, it could be single family. Things that we typically look for is overgrown grass, sometimes like a window unit. If it's missing columns and shutters, or if there's shingles missing off the roof, the fence is falling down, these signs that this property has clearly been neglected. The more of those, the better. So you're going to find that house, look on the assessor's office. I've done videos of this in the past on how to every step. Look on the assessor office, find the owner, get in touch with them, ask them if they want to sell the property, right? Good news is supply and demand dynamics are in your favor because you are the one buyer that they're talking to right now. It's not on the MLS, so they don't have 3 or 4 different agents calling them and all this stuff. You're the one buyer, right? One seller. So supply and demand is in your favor. The downside, this is where experience comes in. You don't have that realtor necessarily, right? Or somebody in your corner who's telling you necessarily what a good deal is, right? The other thing, these are typically cash deals, right? They need work, so it's going to be harder to get bank financing. And they typically, the appeal, the reason they're wanting to sell to you at a discounted price is because you can close quickly, right? You can close in 2 weeks versus you're going to call a realtor. It's going to take, a couple of weeks to get it up and ready. Then we're going to do offers and we're going to do inspections and appraisals and things could fall out, right? They want certainty and time is the appeal of why they're taking less money from you versus putting it on the market. Okay. But still phenomenal strategy. Love it. Cold calling and texting, check all the rules. There's a lot of rules about that, but that kind of falls into driving for dollars. We've actually had a lot of great success with that first one up here, direct mail. Specifically, we were looking for a certain type of vacant lot, a lot in a certain area. And so we had somebody on Fiverr go in and just manually extract all the assessor data and put it in an Excel sheet. And we just sent letters to their primary residents because in the assessor, it'll show you here's the address, but then here's the mailing address, right? And we just sent them a ton of letters. And we actually bought a handful of deals off of that, and it worked pretty well. So that can work too. Deal finders, again, go into the meetups. I cannot preach that enough. It is super important to go to those meetups, meet those people. Because guess what? That's where the wholesalers are. That's where the other investors are. And I would just talk to them, get on their distribution list, those wholesalers, right? Even if you don't think you're ready to buy, get on their list because you never know, right? Get on the list and analyze every deal that they send out, build the relationship and say, hey man, look, I'm here to learn, analyze the deals, ask them questions. And then I'm sure a lot of them will be open enough to let you know how that deal actually went, right? Where those numbers were and if your analysis was close to theirs. And then obviously investor-friendly agents. We talked about MLS and Realtor, but I think it is very important to work with an agent who knows how investors think, right? Because it's a very, very different ballgame finding something for an investor versus finding a homeowner a house, right? Homeowners, that is a very emotional process. They're worried about the paint color and the landscaping most times, right? They're worried about the neighborhood and the schools. Investors, it's very different, right? They are looking at it, or they should be looking at it from a mathematical perspective. And then for your network, you never know. If you start putting feelers out there, you never know who's going to jump and say, oh, hey, actually, I have my mother-in-law or second cousin's house that we inherited. We've been trying to get rid of and we can't figure out what to do with, right? So talk to those people, tell them what you do, tell them what you're looking for. And I think that's also, I'm going to circle back to one of the first things I said, the importance of having a buy box, right? And I don't know if I define that, but it's basically the type of deal that you are looking for. It's super important because if I go to an attorney who deals in successions or I go to a title company and I say, hey, I'm an investor, I'm looking for deals, right? Or you come to me as an agent, right? And say, hey, Mike, send me what deals you have. And what's the first question we're going to ask, right? What does a deal look like? And if you can't answer that question, it's going to be very hard for me to serve you and give you deals because I don't know what a deal is to you. Are you looking for a 50-unit apartment complex? Are you looking for a house that needs $100,000 worth in repairs? Are you looking for turnkey? Are you looking for vacant land? It's very, very important for you to very solidly define that buy box. Now, I know some people like myself, I'll do virtually anything in St. Bernard Parish, but it takes a lot for me to leave, right? So you could be geographically specific and say, hey, I'll do Section 8, I'll do long-term, I'll do Airbnb, I'll do midterm, I'll do apartments, as long as it's in this geographic area. Or you can say, hey, look, anywhere in the Gulf South, I just wanted to hit this ROI metric. It needs to be a single family and whatever, right? But the more specific you can make that buy box, the more successful you'll be, I promise. It's hard at first because you feel like you're limiting yourself. But I promise you, the more specific you can make that buy box, the better off it's going to be for you long term. So that's it. Problem number one, finding the deal. To me, this is the most important. I think it's also the most solvable. And I'll kind of wrap up and start landing the plane with this. This is the most solvable because you can grit through this with hard work, right? If you don't have any money, it's going to be harder for you to grit through that and just find money, right? But you can spend your weekends or evenings or whatever networking, building relationships with these people, driving for dollars, and like you can actually put the hard work in to find deals tomorrow, like without question, right? You can find a deal tomorrow if you're willing to put the work in. So to me, this is the most important, but it's also, and I think, the easiest to jump into. And again, that key takeaway there is super important. Don't look at this and think, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff that I have to do and master. No, pick 1 to 3 things, right? Pick, hey, look, I don't have the time. Let's say you have a corporate job, right? This was me. I don't have a corporate job. I have a corporate job. I don't have time to be driving around looking for houses with missing roof shingles, right? It's not something I'm interested in. Then team up with an investor-friendly agent, right? Or if you're brand new. If you're somewhat experienced and you know what you're looking for, you know your numbers, and you say, I don't know if I necessarily need an agent, then you could jump in and find a wholesaler, right? They're going to do all the dirty work of finding the deals for you. All you have to do is analyze them, right? So kind of knowing what you have and don't have available, right? If you have capital but no time, or time but no capital, will determine where you go on this. But I would pick 2 or 3 and stick with it. Don't expect results overnight, right? It's going to take weeks of putting in the work and planting those seeds. You know, I love my analogies, right? Planting the seeds today that you know you're going to harvest years from now. And to that point, I'll tell you, we sent out those direct mail letters for those lots. I had an owner who told me they had 3 or 4 of them stacked up on top of their fridge by the time they called me, because they've been meaning to call and hadn't. But it took 4 or 5 different letters before they actually called. And we're talking over the span of years, right? Years of me sending these letters out, thinking they're not working, but they are, right? You're having this compounding effect. You're warming up the ice cube. It's not hot enough to melt yet, but it is having an impact on the stored energy there. So super important. Keep going. Don't quit. Pick one, focus, and just work on small bits of progress every single day. So that's it. Deal finding 1. Next up, the next video, the second problem we're going to solve is buying the deal financing. We're going to talk about the different types of financing, what works, what doesn't, what are some things that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of. But I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next one.